today. We rely on them to meet each day's demands with efficiency and speed. But man's need to create a self-powered vehicle dates back thousands of years. Ancient records describe an economical and environmentally friendly carriage, able to transport passengers faster than horses. Our first record breaker is an ancient vehicle that moved quicker than the Model T Ford, the ancient Chinese land yacht. Can ancient discoveries corroborate these tales? We will build a land yacht and will attempt to beat the ancient land speed record.
In about 550 AD, a man called Gaozang Wushu is said to have invented a sailing land yacht which could carry about 30 men at considerable speed for, it's said, hundreds of miles.
It was a wheeled vehicle with sails, and it was reported that it could travel several hundred li in a day. Now, a li is roughly half a kilometre, so we're looking at distances perhaps of sort of 70 to 100 miles in a day.
Ancient Chinese records contain no visual depiction of the vehicle. Nevertheless, there is evidence that the Chinese had for many centuries harnessed the wind for travel on land as well as sea.
We know it was fairly commonplace to attach sails to the huge single-wheel wheelbarrows which were invented in China probably around about the 2nd century AD. And it was very common for them to actually use these wind assistants to help them move these things.
Model maker Richard Windley has designed a land yacht based on the known technology of the time.
We don't know whether they based these vehicles on seagoing vessels or whether they were based on carts. It seems quite likely they would have based them on a standard junk sort of design. So effectively that's what we've got, a junk with a sort of standard junk rigging, but it would have axles and wheels on it.
The junk was common in the rivers and coastal areas of ancient China, as it is today.
The flat bottom of Chinese ships was especially useful for navigating in shallow waters, particularly the rivers whose water level varied considerably with the seasons. The typical hull shape which is associated with the Chinese junk would obviously be the ideal shape for translation into a land yacht.
However, translating the traditional junk design onto a land-based vehicle is far from easy.
One of the problems with a reconstruction like this is the classic junk fore and aft rig would require quite a lot of management of the sails, and that would be more than one person could deal with. So we've actually simplified this. We're giving it one sail, one mast. We're not all that sure how the junk rig is going to work in terms of efficiency.
Before making the sail, the performance of Richard's proposed rigging is tested using a 9th scale model prototype.
We've come here today to the wind tunnel at Manchester University, and the object is to find out how it works, whether its performance is effective, and what the most effective sailing rig is going to be. Okay, Andrew, we've got a lot of numbers on the screen, but I think some of these are more important than the others.
Yeah, I mean, the main ones we're interested in are the thrust, which is moving the yacht along, the side force, which is acting across the yacht, and also the pitching moment, the moment due to the force, which is going to try and dig the nose into the ground.
Right. So the wind is doing 3 different things. What we're looking at is trying to find an optimum sail setting where we get the maximum forward movement,
Yeah.
an acceptable minimum of sideways movement,
Yeah.
And not undue pitch.
Yeah.
Because obviously if it's pitching on its nose, it won't steer.
The thing is, if the side force grows too much, then you end up blowing the yacht onto its side, so that's something you need to be careful of.
The experts reset the position and the angle of the mast and sail several times to discover the best rigging for optimum performance.
So with the sail set at a 45-degree angle, at 15 degrees yacht from the wind, we seem to have something like an optimum sailing performance.
Yeah, I mean, the thrust is at its highest position, and the side force is getting close to a high value as well. So I think that's probably going to be one of the best attitudes to actually sail the yacht at.
With confidence in the design's effectiveness, work is begun on the full-scale sail. Dick Hannaford has over 30 years' experience in modern and traditional sailmaking.
The beauty about the junk sail is that with the battens running across the sail, they're able to control the sail much better than the sails used on Western craft. And you can reduce or increase the size like you can a Venetian blind.
As the wind's strength increases or decreases, a pilot adjusts the sail size to control the speed of the craft.
This is in a synthetic canvas, which has the feel and the look of a traditional canvas. Very similar to the one that the Chinese would be familiar with.
The finished build is transported to the sands of Breen Beach on the south coast of England.
Okay, we're here on the beach. This is the reconstruction of the hypothetical Chinese land yacht. In some ways, it's much more complicated than a boat because there are issues with how we attach the mast. Now, we've got quite a lot of flex in the mast, and the mounting of the mast is absolutely critical. On a boat, you've got a lot more depth, so the mast can be mounted a lot more rigidly. And then the chassis is going to flex, so as the mast waves, the actual wood will twist backwards and forwards, and so absorb some of the pressure of the mast, rather than make the whole thing absolutely rigid, which might possibly end up in breakage. In a sense, it's a bit like a very simplified soapbox, but the basic principles are really kind of dictated by the physics.
The team is joined by Mike Young, a professional racer of modern land yachts.
The modern sport started probably after the Second World War. An American newspaper company sponsored building some sand yachts, and they were made of wood. And then the sport has obviously progressed from that type of thing to modern craft like this one. I'm really looking forward to getting in and giving it a try and just putting myself in the position of the old guys that used to, obviously, not probably the old guys, they were young guys who were actually sailing it, but in olden times actually sailing that craft.
But the team hits an ancient problem.
We've got a small technical hitch. The wind has dropped and there's nowhere near enough wind to conduct the experiment.
It's 4 miles an hour, it's just gone down 3, going down, that's just not enough wind to certainly move this thing anyway.
And I would say for this one, with the weight and the size of the sail, we would need 15 to 20 miles an hour. Yes.
Yeah. Well, of course, you're dealing with the wind, which is a natural phenomenon, and I mean, it's variable. It's going to be variable in China 2,000 years ago, the same as it is today. I mean, they're going to have the same problem, aren't they? We've actually chosen a rather nice day, haven't we? That's the problem.
It's a lovely day today, but not for sailing.
Just pull the parallel bead through a little bit. Parallel bead. That's great.
Okay. Yeah.
Just going to tighten it down. That's it. Pull down. Give it a good tug. Right. Put a half hitch on it.
Finally, wind speed increases. Will the ancient Discovery's land yacht successfully transport our pilot, as Goatsang's vessel reportedly did some 2,000 years ago?
It works. We've got the wind behind. The land cart works. We're away.
Absolutely brilliant. It's going, which is tremendous.
The land yacht could reach a speed of 40 miles per hour, faster than a horse. It would have taken the ancient land speed record.
Steering-wise, it's very cumbersome, and I haven't got quite a turning circle, as I have certainly in mine. But the steering's fine. I mean, it will steer around corners and steer around things.
What we've discovered today is that a wind-powered land craft using ancient technology is perfectly feasible.
As a form of transport, yes. In olden days, yeah, absolutely no problem at all. And free.
In the 6th century, Chinese engineers, using wind for fuel, created an effective self-powered vehicle over 1,000 years before the advent of modern automobiles.
There's more than enough power in the wind to drive a wheeled vehicle along at a reasonable speed over quite long distances.
The successful trial of ancient Discovery's sail cart has confirmed that by adapting the technology of the time to the natural environment, the Chinese could have indeed achieved the world's first self-powered land vehicle.
I'm so pleased it actually got going.
Some innovations, like the land yacht, are still in use in recognizable form today. Others reached a dead end when no further development was possible. From Africa, Ancient Discoveries has unearthed a device that was so deadly it was deliberately suppressed. The secret of why this was the deadliest knife in history is our next ancient discovery. For centuries, the lethal power of this bizarre African weapon has lain dormant in its elaborate blades. Ancient Discoveries is uncovering the lost secrets of the world's deadliest throwing knife. Over 500 years ago, a tribe called the Kuba Bushong were known as the most ruthless and terrifying warriors of the southern Congo. According to legend, they were armed with a strange and terrifying weapon, the shongu.
The ruling clan of the Kuba people are called the Bushong, which means the people of the lightning, or the people of the shongo, the throwing knife.
Records of throwing knives in Africa are sparse. Evidence relies on oral history.
What remains a mystery is the fact that most of these objects that we know of today as throwing knives, only relatively few of them have been documented as being thrown. And even fewer still have been actually documented as weapons of war.
Chris Spring is one of the world's leading experts on African throwing knives.
The reasons for their use are still kind of shrouded in mystery in many ways. Some we know a bit about, some we know were thrown in particular ritual kind of combats. The vast majority, though, we don't know exactly what their real significance, what their real function is.
Evidence for the shongu comes from the explorer Emile Tordé, who traveled deep into the Congo to meet the Kuba king at the beginning of the 20th century. Tordé only heard the weapon described. He never saw it in action. To test the performance of this strange weapon, Ancient Discoveries expert and blacksmith Adrian Legg has forged a replica shongu.
The shongu wasn't actually too bad to make. It was made out of a piece of sheet and actually cut out. And then it was work hardened, which is a method by which you actually hammer the material. And that was the way they would have actually toughened it up.
Knives like the shongu were a tribal status symbol and would have been beautifully decorated.
These objects would have been extremely personal. I think they would have been decorated by the individuals, probably with tribal markings.
Over a foot in diameter, with 5 points and 10 blades forged out of hardened steel, it certainly looks lethal. To find out how much damage the shongu could cause, Ancient Discoveries has enlisted the help of expert knife thrower John Taylor.
Throwing weapons work by literally spinning themselves through the air. You impart the spin into the knife.
John has been studying the shongu to work out how it might have been thrown.
My first thought was you actually throw it and then bring it back. However, I soon realized that the spike at the side would hit you in the back. So I suspect this was thrown that way.
The shongu's perfectly balanced aerodynamic shape means that John is able to hit the target with great accuracy.